Hi, I'm Josh Levine. My podcast, The Queen, tells the story of Linda Taylor. She was a con artist, a kidnapper, and maybe even a murderer. She was also given the title the Welfare Queen, and her story was used by Ronald Reagan to justify slashing aid to the poor. Now, it's time to hear her real story. Over the course of 4 episodes, you'll find out what was done to Linda Taylor, what she did to others, and what was done in her name.
The great lesson of this, for me, is that people will come to their own conclusions based on what their prejudices are.
Subscribe to The Queen on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening right now.
Slate's Ben Mathis-Lilley grew up in Michigan. He's an expert on Michigan's championship football team, surviving Michigan winters. But he flew home recently because of politics. He had this theory about Michigan's Republican Party, and he wanted to see it in action. Ben's theory goes something like this.
Michigan is the most over-the-top example of the kind of dysfunction and conflict that is plaguing state Republican parties across the country.
When Ben says the Michigan State GOP is dysfunctional, he means the party's been running out of money. It's also been kicking out some of its leadership and driving other leaders away. And all of this was set to come to a head a few weeks back at the statewide nominating convention, the place where the party would confirm its support of Donald J. Trump as the Republican nominee for president. So Ben, he got on a plane to see how it all went down. Once you got to this meeting, when did the trouble start?
Pretty much right away.
The first sign of trouble was that no one knew where the convention was going to be. Until a few days ahead of time, it was scheduled for Detroit and then maybe Grand Rapids. Anyway, once they got that sorted, the party members who showed up had to figure out how to work together to get things done.
Right.
Just picture a room of, more than 100 people, and dozens of them literally are shouting at each other at any given point.
If it's 3 times, you can be removed. Point of order! Point of privilege!
Ben and a few other journalists recorded this meeting. To me, it sounds like a wrestling match.
The parliamentarians both decided that we can move on, and that's what we're doing.
The fights here are personal, deeply felt. They are fights about who understands the rules better and who belongs. Like at one point, there was this question, should we let certain delegates into this meeting? The chair of the committee, tired of the back and forth over all this.
Billy, we have a motion on the floor to end discussion.
And the chair of the meeting wanted to shut down discussion, and she said, let's have a vote. Everyone who wants to shut down discussion of this issue, say aye.
All those in favor of ending discussion, say aye. Aye! Any opposed?
No!
And way more people said nay, but then she tried to say the ayes have it.
Okay, the ayes have it. Discussion.
And then people went nuts.
Okay, all right.
It was almost kind of funny. It was so obvious that she hadn't won the vote, but that she was trying to just steamroll over it.
Was there a point where you thought, maybe this meeting just won't get done?
Oh, absolutely. There were a couple points. Ultimately, everyone agreed on pretty much everything. Everyone just wanted to have their say. Everyone wanted to have their turn to talk. And everyone was very distrustful of people on the other side who they felt were trying to shut them down or railroad them or were involved in some kind of scheme against them. There was no trust.
Today on the show, trust issues in the Republican Party, in Michigan, and around the country. Will this mess stand in the GOP's way? I'm Mary Harris. You're listening to What Next? Stick around. This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Whether you're driving, cooking, or doing laundry, Progressive knows the podcasts you listen to go best when they're bundled with another activity. Much like how their Progressive home and auto policies go best when they're bundled. Having these two policies together makes taking care of your insurance easier. And it could help you save, too. Customers who save by switching their home and car insurance to Progressive save nearly $800 on average. That's a whole lot of savings and protection for your favorite podcast listening activities, like going on a road trip, cooking dinner, or even hitting the home gym. Yep, your home and your car are even easier to protect when you bundle your insurance together. Find your perfect combo. Get a home and car insurance quote at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $793 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2021 and May 2022. Potential savings will vary. This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. Okay, Ben, I want you to tell me the story of how the Michigan Republican Party got to where it is right now. And I wonder if to do that, we need to go back to 2020 when Donald Trump lost the presidential election. But one of the places where his loss was contested was Michigan. So tell me how that election really set the stage for everything you saw just recently.
Yeah. If you're writing a screenplay, you would have it start on that night, on the election night 2020, specifically in the vote counting center in what used to be called the TCF Center, a big convention center in downtown Detroit. And on that night, there was an observer, a poll watcher, volunteer poll watcher named Christina Caramo, who is a Republican activist, local Republican activist, hadn't done a whole lot up to that point, not a well-known name by any means, but she went to the TCF Center to observe the vote. She says she saw improprieties there. When Trump was declared the loser of Michigan, Christina Caramo's affidavit was submitted as part of one of the court cases that you may remember. Lots of court cases across the country were submitted by the Trump campaign, by the Republican Party, alleging electoral misconduct, voter fraud, all sorts of improprieties. And she would go on TV and talk about it. She went on Sean Hannity's show on Fox News.
And people are literally cheering for us to create this monarchy in our nation where we have no authority as citizens. That's going to be dangerous.
Very well said.
And Christina Caramo is kind of one of those unicorns that the Republican Party embraces. She's a Black woman who was in Detroit and basically saying these Democrats are doing it all wrong and they're stealing your vote.
Yeah, from the start. And I think that's important to note that a lot of people in my story and a lot of people involved in the Republican Party, it was that stolen vote idea that really activated them. This idea that there was a conspiracy against them. And so they're not even necessarily the kind of people who were heavily involved in party activity, even in like 2016 when Trump was running. So it's almost like a second generation of MAGA activists.
MAGA 2.0 or 3.0.
Yeah. And Caramo is one of them. And people say she's very articulate. She's very persuasive, charismatic when you're speaking to her in person or at these party meetings. And so she kind of just organically rose up through the ranks because she was saying, I was one of the people that saw this fraud. And election integrity became the all-consuming issues of the Republican Party everywhere, but especially in Michigan, because it was such a close vote and because there was so many hearings and reports and investigations and lawsuits filed in Michigan.
It was just 150,000 votes or something that separated Biden and Trump, right?
Right. So this became like issues 1 through 10 for Republicans in Michigan. And if you were a Republican who didn't really care about that, you were kind of like pushed aside, or you pushed yourself aside and said, like, I just can't do this anymore. And so the people who became local delegates who were on the quote unquote state committee became people who were, very convinced about that there was a conspiracy to steal the election.
Christina Caramo leveraged her star turn to run for Michigan's Secretary of State in 2022. That is the position that's in charge of running the very elections these new Republicans saw as corrupt. She lost pretty handily. But of course, if you don't believe elections are legit, it's easy to not accept the results. Her refusal to accept defeat only seemed to animate her supporters. In 2023, they elected her chair of the Michigan GOP. So Christina Caramo takes charge of the Republican Party. Does she do a good job?
Well, that's the thing. She does, in many people's eyes, so bad a job that even hardcore MAGA supporters who all do believe the 2020 election was stolen, these are people who still believe that, want to vote her out, want to get rid of her as chair.
Oh, bad how? Like, what's she doing wrong?
Fundamentally, I think her problem comes down to money. Her idea coming in as state chair was, we're not going to cater to these wealthy donors who have been running the party for a long time. We're going to build a fundraising network through the grassroots. The problem was it wasn't a yes and strategy of like, yeah, we're going to empower the grassroots, but we're also still going to meet with the big donors if they want to. She was actively turning away millionaires who wanted to give a lot of money to the state Republican Party and saying, no, like your time is over. But then that grassroots fundraising strategy didn't actually come off. It's a little harder, as they found out, to say like, hey, it's March 2023. Can you help us raise $2 million for the Michigan Republican Party? By the way, we don't even have an election, for another 21 months or whatever.
I mean, at some point there was a question of whether Michigan's Republicans could mount a primary election, right?
Yeah, I mean, they were actually defaulting on their line of credit, according to the bank that they had, the line of credit with. Like, they just weren't paying their bills. They were down to like $100,000 or something in their campaign in their state accounts, and you can't run a statewide campaigns for $100,000 in 2024. Like, instead of just addressing the actual issue. Caramo said, this is a conspiracy against me. This is, a collaboration of these elite donors who I've kind of forced out of the party. It's the globalists. So she's now accusing these other people who were completely authentic grassroots people themselves, by any definition, of, conspiring with global forces to remove her from the party. And then they turn out and say, no, you're actually the one who was planted by globalist conspiracy forces. The Chinese Communist Party is one theory. And so that's, I think, like where you start to realize, like, this isn't a normal political dispute between people who might not like each other personally. They've grown not to like each other personally, but they also see every single issue as a referendum or a kind of ultimate final battle between these global forces of good and evil. And even if it's just something as small as like, who's going to pay for the conference that we have on Mackinac Island in June?
Eventually, these anti-Christina Caramo forces come together and decide we need to try to oust her from the chair position. What happens when they do that? Because my understanding is that, like, it's not like she walked away in shame.
Absolutely not. So there's people who've raised these objections within the party, and these decisions are made in Michigan by the state committee, which is like about 100 people who are elected at local levels. So they represent each part of the state. Several dozen of them have agreed that they share these concerns about her leadership, and they say we need someone else in charge. A larger faction is still loyal to Caramo. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing to remember through all of this, is that she still held the loyalty of a plurality of the people who make this decision. But this is kind of another microcosm within a microcosm here. The people who supported her were so offended by the idea of voting her out that they didn't show up to this meeting that was held on the question of whether to remove her.
Wow. Just stunningly self-defeating.
Layers and layers of refusing to recognize legitimacy here, right? Like, we don't recognize the legitimacy of the 2020 election. We don't recognize the legitimacy of the meeting you're holding to discuss who should be in charge of the Michigan Republican Party. And so these people don't show up to this meeting. The remaining anti-Caramo faction is able to establish a quorum through some kind of creative use of the bylaws, and they are able to hold a vote and remove her.
And they appoint someone with Trump's blessing, right? It's Trump's ex-ambassador to the Netherlands.
Yes. So a couple weeks later, they kind of find this guy who's going to act as like a stabilizing figurehead. His name is Pete Hoekstra. He was a congressman from Michigan, a guy who's been around the block, knows how to raise money, has good relationships with the kind of the establishment Republicans in Michigan. But he's a pretty right-wing guy. He's been Trump's ambassador. But I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to ask you whether you think Christina Caramo recognized the legitimacy of Pete Hoekstra's appointment as party chair.
No, definitely not. Especially since he has a name like Hoekstra.
Yeah, exactly.
Hoeks is baked in.
Right. It's right there. And don't think that they didn't notice that. I just always get a kick out of this. Her response to it is to deny the quote unquote allegations that she's been removed, as if it was like a rumor. So she says, no, I'm not acknowledging this. I'm not giving Pete Hoekstra the logins to our social media account, our email accounts, our website, our bank accounts. So like Pete Hoekstra now he gets recognized by the National Republican Party. He is like running around acting as if he's in charge of the state party. Trump says he's in charge of the state party, but he doesn't have any of the mechanisms to actually do state party stuff.
What do you mean?
He can't spend money. He can't raise money and put it in the bank account. He can't even send out an email to the delegates to the state convention and say, we're having our state convention in Grand Rapids. I mean, it really was like a situation like a civil war when two regimes are claiming control of a country and operating rival governments. And that was what was happening in Michigan earlier this spring.
Neither side was going to budge here. Eventually, it all had to get settled in court. 2 days before that meeting Ben attended, a judge told Caramo to back off. And only then did she concede. But the issue remains a lingering embarrassment. And it means the state party could be actively hurting the GOP's chances in a state with razor-thin margins. After all, it's not just Donald Trump on the ballot this fall. There are congressional seats and even an open Senate seat.
I think that Republicans, Mitch McConnell, would love to flip the Michigan Senate seat. I think they have a great shot at it. But what ends up happening is like everything just has to circumvent the state party in this weird way. Like the guy that's probably going to win the Republican primary in Michigan is this guy named Mike Rogers, the Republican primary for Senate. He was a Trump skeptical member of Congress. He's a big national security guy. He has connections to the deep state, if you will. And he is looked at with suspicion by a lot of MAGA voters, a lot of these grassroots people. That allows us to draw another important distinction. The people who are running the Republican Party in Michigan right now, they don't even necessarily represent like a majority of Republican primary voters. Republican primary voters are probably going to select this guy, Mike Rogers, because he's kind of made his peace with Trump. He's made up with Trump. Trump endorses him. And he's like a pretty presentable guy. And he's got a pretty good shot at winning the Senate race in the fall. So like he's going to have to kind of run with one arm tied behind his back because he doesn't have this apparatus behind him.
After the break, this dysfunction is not just in Michigan.
It's hard to imagine a world where we leave future generations with fewer rights and freedoms. The Supreme Court has stolen the constitutional right to control our bodies. Now politicians in nearly every state have introduced bills that would block people from getting the essential sexual and reproductive care they need, including abortion. Planned Parenthood believes everyone deserves access to care. It's a human right. We won't give up and we won't back down. Help ensure the next generation can decide their own futures. Donate to Planned Parenthood. Visit plannedparenthood.org/future.
This episode is brought to you by Discover. When it comes to your finances, Discover wants you to know they are the credit card that is always there for you. With 24/7 U.S.-based live customer service, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, that means no more waiting for, quote, normal business hours just to get a hold of someone. We are talking real service from real people whenever you need it. Get the customer service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. I wonder if we can talk a bit about how what's happening in Michigan is reflected around the country. Like, can you tell me briefly about states that are facing similar challenges? Like, I've heard Arizona talked about, Nevada, Georgia. Like, what's happening in those other places? Because I know each state is a little bit different, but they share some things.
Yeah, I think what you see in those states is number one, a similar inability to get finances under control. And then number two, accusations that your rivals within the state party are conspiring against you and represent kind of outside global forces. And that happens over and over.
It doesn't help that a lot of these people in state parties are being investigated for their associations with January 6th. Like in Georgia, a lot of the state party leaders were involved with, the question of should we send alternative delegates or electors.
Yeah, in Arizona and Nevada as well. Like a lot of these people were involved in the quote unquote fake elector slates, like the electors that were going to go to DC to cast their ballots for Trump.
And that has financial implications. Like now the state party is like, oof, we got to defend these people.
They have to be defended. They are getting knocked out of their roles sometimes because they get indicted. And then in a lot of places, it ends in the same way it did in Michigan, which is lawsuits and just being unable to even hold a simple meeting without having to go to court over it.
And how important are these state parties in an election year? I just wonder how the ground game in pretty important states will be impacted if parties in Arizona, Georgia, Michigan are sort of wrapped up fighting with each other.
I'm as curious as anybody to see how that plays out, because reports of party dysfunction are not exaggerated. That's the one thing I really learned when I went to Michigan. Even on a moment to moment level, we're talking about people who truly do not trust each other, who are paranoid about what's going on around them at all times. And they want to elect Trump, but they also think that they're fighting for the soul of the American nation. And that's a big deal to them too. So they're not going to set aside these feuds and say, all right, we're going to hold hands for the next 9 months and get Trump elected. They're not going to do that. I don't think that's going to happen. However, they're politically engaged. They're all going to vote for Trump. They're all going to be talking to their neighbors about voting for Trump. They're going to do as much as they can within their spheres to vote for Trump. These are people who are going to do their best to get him elected, even if it's not within the auspices of the state party.
I guess the issue for me when I look at these state party issues is it's not just Trump, right? In order for Trump to have the full range of his power, he needs congresspeople and senators and other people to be there to help pass his agenda. So I just wonder if any of the people that you met with in Michigan were kind of thinking about that puzzle. We have to be thinking collectively because otherwise, actually, the guy we want in office won't be as effective.
No, I don't think that the people I talk to are thinking in those terms. But talking to these people, it helped me kind of make sense of how they're thinking. They think they're in an almost a civil war. And I don't mean that even to be glib. And they think that Donald Trump is the only person who understands the stakes. And so to them, 51 votes in the Senate, whatever, that's so far down the list of priorities that it's not something that they're going to worry about. And it's not just because they're stupid or they don't understand how the Senate works. It's just because the way the apocalyptic terms that they see this whole thing in are much bigger than the kind of normal workings of politics as most people understand them.
It's interesting. I kind of worried you and I talking about this story, someone could blow us off because they might see us as just kind of relishing the Schadenfreude, haha, mess over here. But I hear you talk, and actually you seem deeply concerned about the fact that yes, this is messy, and yes, there are some strategic things that are maybe being left out of the discussion, but the terms of the debate are so nuclear that it just raises other problems.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think that's true. I mean, there's two levels. Like, I think I came away from two things from actually kind of going in and talking to people. In a way, I began to take them more seriously. And I need to be careful about saying that because I don't take their claims seriously. Like, I don't think there's a conspiracy by the CIA or the Chinese Communist Party or whatever, but I take their belief in it more seriously. And I think that's an important thing to remember. Like, it all goes back to 2020. And like, you have to put yourself in the mindset when you're thinking about this of someone who really believes that the 2020 election was stolen. A lot of people out there think that's what happened. And these are the people who are like on the ground now for Trump. And like, that's the kind of mindset you have to put yourself in if you want to understand how they're going to react to any given event.
Basically, this may all look like a mess to you. That doesn't mean it won't win.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And that's what it comes back to. Like, yes, if we're talking again in November, could we be talking about Trump came up 250,000 votes short again in Michigan because the state party like didn't have money to send out mailers or like do its canvassing and its get out the vote? Absolutely. Like, that absolutely could happen. I would not feel safe in saying that it's going to happen. I think Trump could absolutely still win. It might end up that this is all like very decisive and high leverage kind of failures by state parties will be what holds him back from winning. But I don't think anyone knows that with confidence yet.
Ben Mathis-Lilley, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Ben Mathis-Lilley is a senior writer here at Slate. And that's the show. If you're a fan of What Next, the best way to support our work is to join Slate Plus. Go on over to slate.com/whatnextplus to find out more. What Next is produced by Paige Osburn, Elena Schwartz, Rob Gunther, Anna Phillips, and Madeline Ducharme. We are led by Alicia Montgomery with a little help from Susan Matthews. Ben Richmond is the Senior Director of Podcast Operations here at Slate. And I'm Mary Harris. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you back here next time.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.